Hey, welcome back to the Plant Pair channel. Today I want to talk about something that I think has gotten completely blown out of proportion in the fitness space, protein. I know this one is probably going to upset some people out there, but I figured I'd make a video on my personal thoughts when it comes to protein. You see people everywhere stressing about it, tracking every gram, chugging shakes, filling their plates with as much protein as possible, thinking that's what's going to make or break their progress. But from my experience, it's not nearly as big of a deal as people make it out to be. I've been training for years. I eat 100% vegan, and on average, I probably eat around 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. Some days it's less, some days it's more, and I still feel great, recover well, and stay fit. So, in this video, I just want to share my perspective, why I think protein is overhyped, what really drives muscle growth, and what's actually worked for me personally. Let's start with the obvious. We are living in a protein obsessed world. If you scroll through fitness content, you'll see the same advice over and over: eat more protein. Didn't gain muscle? Eat more protein. Didn't hit that PR? Eat more protein. It's important, of course. You need some amount of protein to repair and rebuild tissue, but it's not the main factor that decides whether you build or maintain muscle. The main factor is resistance training, the consistent progressive stimulus you place on your muscles. Protein doesn't send the stimulus for growth, training does. Protein just supports the rebuilding process after you've trained. If there's no signal, no consistent challenge to the muscle, your body has no reason to build or maintain it, no matter how much protein you eat. So when people are worried about getting copious amounts of protein a day, but they're skipping workouts or not training with intent, I think they're missing the big picture. From what I've learned over the years, the quality and consistency of your resistance training are what truly determine your progress. When you apply resistance, whether that's through push ups, squats, pull ups, or weights, you're sending a message to your body: hey, we need to get bigger, stronger, and stick around. That stimulus is what triggers muscle repair and growth. Protein is just the building material your body uses after it gets that signal. I like to think of it like building a house, right? The protein is the bricks, but training is the construction crew. Without the workers showing up, it doesn't matter how many bricks you've piled up outside. That's why I put way more focus on the work itself, the training stimulus, the recovery, the sleep, the overall consistency. When those things are solid, my body uses the food I eat, including protein, efficiently. But if my training or sleep is off, no amount of protein makes up for that. Now, I'm not here to tell anyone how much protein they should eat. Everybody's different. I can only share what's worked for me personally. For me, I usually end up around 80 to 100 grams of protein per day, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. I don't track it super tightly, it just naturally lands there based on how much food I eat. That seems to be a good balance for me. I recover well and my performance stays strong and I feel great. But again, that's just how I look at it. I'm not saying that's what anybody else should do. It's just what I find works for my body and my training. The main takeaway for me is that more isn't always better. At a certain point, eating more protein doesn't automatically mean more muscle. It just means more food your body has to process and often less room for other nutrients. I think a lot of people overcomplicate this stuff. I know that if most of my meals are coming from whole, minimally processed foods, and I get enough total calories, especially from a mix of grains, starches, legumes, tofu and tempeh, vegetables, nuts and seeds, and even fruits, I'm already getting plenty of protein without tracking anything. I do use vegan protein powder occasionally, but honestly, it's more for flavor and convenience than anything else, like I've said already. I'll throw a scoop in my oatmeal or smoothie sometimes just because it tastes delicious. It's not something I rely on to quote unquote hit a protein target. Here's the thing most people miss: protein is in almost everything, not just tofu or powders. A bowl of oats has protein. Pasta has protein. Even vegetables like broccoli, spinach, and potatoes contribute small amounts that add up over the day. If you're eating enough to support your activity level, it's actually pretty hard to not get enough protein. The only time it becomes an issue is if you're chronically under eating or skipping a lot of meals, but that's a calorie problem, not a protein problem. I've mentioned this in past videos, I believe, but I'm also a believer in the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance. And I know so many people will harp on the RDA, and that's fine. Believe what you will, but I personally think it's a good mark. The RDA is about zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That's what most nutrition researchers and doctors like Dr. Neil Barnard and Stanford's professor Christopher Gardner recommend for a healthy adult. Now, that number is based on sedentary individuals, people who aren't doing any training. But even Gardner has said that if you're doing some resistance training or you're generally active, it makes sense to maybe add roughly 10% more protein. And when you actually do that math, that's not much. For example, if the RDA puts you at 60 grams, that extra 10% only bumps you up to around 66 grams a day, just enough to cover the extra recovery needs. Now, personally, because I eat a decent amount of total calories, I naturally end up around 80 to 100 grams a day, maybe, which for me is about 1 gram per kilogram of body weight on the lower end of that range. I think that's a smart and realistic range for me since I just want to look good, feel good, and stay strong, not pack on another 30 pounds of muscle to step on a bodybuilding stage. For the everyday person, chasing 150 plus grams a day just doesn't offer much extra benefit, in my opinion. Usually, when people push their protein intake sky high, it starts to backfire a bit. It often means they're crowding out carbohydrates, and carbs are absolutely crucial for good training sessions. Carbs fuel your workouts. They give you energy to push hard, and they even help preserve muscle by being protein sparing. When I used to focus more on protein and less on carbs, I noticed I didn't feel as energized during my workouts. Once I brought the carbs back up, things like oats, rice, potatoes, quinoa, fruit, my training intensity and recovery both improved. So for me, it's not about trying to cram in as much protein as possible. It's about eating enough total calories, keeping my energy up, and just making sure my meals are balanced. That's what's worked for me over time. I think a lot of people would be surprised how much progress they can make if they stopped stressing about macros and just focused on patterns. Are you training consistently? Are you eating mostly real food? Are you sleeping and recovering well? Those patterns, not perfect tracking, are what move the needle. So for me, the equation is simple: train hard and consistently, eat enough total calories from whole plant foods, get good sleep and recovery, and just let the protein fall where it naturally does. That's been the formula that's kept me feeling good, strong, and consistent long term. When I look at the big picture, I think too many people put protein on this pedestal and ignore other things that matter way more. If you're lifting regularly, putting real effort into your workouts, sleeping well, managing stress, and eating enough food, you're already covering the bases that matter the most. Protein has its role, but it's not the star of the show. So if you're training 3 or 4 days a week, living an active lifestyle, and eating balanced meals, you're probably doing just fine without having to chase crazy protein numbers. So yeah, that's my take on the whole protein thing. For me, it's way overhyped. I eat what feels right for my body, and I focus most of my energy on training hard, recovering well, and staying consistent. That combination has worked best for me over the long haul. At the end of the day, the goal is to build something sustainable. If you're constantly stressed about hitting some extra protein target, that's probably not sustainable. But if you build habits around real food, consistent movement, and good recovery, you'll naturally hit what your body needs. And that's when fitness starts to feel effortless. You've got to experiment, listen to your body, and figure out what makes you feel and perform your best. So, if this gave you a different perspective or took some pressure off about hitting huge protein numbers, drop a like. It really helps the channel. And if you want to see more about how I train and eat on a vegan diet, feel free to check out other videos here on the Plant Pair. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.